Mr. Peters.
What's happening, Kennedy? How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Can you hear?
All right.
I can.
Cool. Just wanted to make sure of that. All right. So, Kennedy, how's it going in DC?
It's going pretty good. I've just had, some good meetings today. Figured out some of my projects that's going to be finalized that I'll start working on towards the second half of my internship because, June went by pretty fast for me. I don't know about you, but June came and gone.
It did. It came by really fast, and it went really fast. And obviously now it's pretty much July. Next week, July hits, right? So that brings us into a whole new paradigm. So I'm excited though. You guys might notice that I'm not in my normal office today as I'm traveling, and not in a remote pop-up location. So, but I'm cool. I'm good. Just traveling with the family, trying to multitask. Keep, as entrepreneurs and business owners, you never stop. So you find a way to pop up and post up from anywhere to get the job done. So I'm here, Kennedy. I'm here.
That's right. Well, first, I wanted to kick off the show. I had something planned, but this is recent, urgent news. I don't know if you guys saw, but today it was the sentencing of Derek Chauvin's case today, and it came out that 22 and a half years. So, how do you feel about that? How do you feel, Mr. Peters?
No, go for it. I wanted to hear your thoughts.
I feel like he probably should have gotten 30, but you know what? It's something that I'll take. Because at the end of the day, I hate to be negative, but I feel like they're going to get him in jail regardless. Like, he's going to get, a little roughed up on. That's what I feel like. So what about you, Mr. Peters?
Well, first of all, it's significant, right? It's significant because normally we're used to them getting acquitted. And then if they get a sentence, if we look at what happened in the Amber Geiger's case with Bolton John in Dallas, where we had a police officer that was not called to a scene. She was off duty and went into the wrong apartment and killed the man in his own apartment. So, and she gets 5 years. So when we look at the carrying out of justice, it's been so one-sided, so disrespected in terms of the African-American community for so long that this is a significant sentence and something that we have not seen. So that's on the one hand. The other question that just the other side of me always has to ask, if this is reversed and it's a Black gentleman on trial, is that sentence the same? Is that sentence more? And I think we can unconditionally improve it by case study. There's more, and it's significantly more. So we still have a long way to go in what I call same justice. That's my campaign. That's my slogan. I'm all about same justice. So the same justice that you get is the same justice I should get. It shouldn't be a difference in justice. And what we have been suffering with America for so long is a difference in justice. We have a different system of justice dependent on your race, your socioeconomic factors. And that is just clearly wrong. And we must do something about that.
Yes, great way to put it, Mr. Peters. I definitely appreciate that. And since we're talking about justice, so how was your Juneteenth this past weekend? How did you celebrate Juneteenth? Was it good?
Yeah, so I celebrated Juneteenth. Obviously I celebrated it actually at a wedding of somebody near and dear to me, our other half that's missing today. But also, Juneteenth is always significant, and I think we can never do enough to explain why Juneteenth is significant. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later because you discovered something in your research in a statement that someone else made. And I'll have you read that later, but they basically were not satisfied. They kind of basically went through a trilogy, so to speak, and said, we asked for this and we got this.
Exactly.
We got a holiday for Juneteenth instead of this. And so, I love to have you why don't you read that and kind of set us up for that discussion around Juneteenth.
So, as you all may know, Juneteenth has become now a federal holiday this past weekend. So, it was some mixed emotions about it from not just the Black community, but also from some white people as well and other races. So, I saw this one viral tweet. It's from this dude. He's just viral on Twitter. His name was Joshua Patosh, and he said they painted BLM instead of defunding the police, clapped for essential workers instead of raising the wage, and made Juneteenth a holiday instead of making sure Black folks can vote. Always a symbolic victory instead of material change. And when I saw that on Twitter and I was doing my research, I said, I got to incorporate this into the show because it kind of, you think about it. Like at first I was like, yay, Juneteenth. But then I was like, you know what? I mean, I'm happy that, it's a federal holiday, but this is not what we asked for. This is not what we worked for. This isn't what we wanted. And it is always material change, the Black Lives Matter. Like even here in DC, the Black Lives Matter Plaza. And it's the little things like, okay, yeah, but what about actual change? What about trying to end systematic racism in different, ways like voter suppression, having equal access to clean water, the systematic racism in the educational system. It's so many things that we will want to get done, but it's just, here you go, we'll give you a holiday and that's it. And I saw this TikTok too where it was kind of like, I wish I could screen record and show you guys, but it was basically saying it was a circle of, it was like Black people trying to have justice. And it went around like a puzzle around all the issues that we have as, in America, but instead it only it just circled Juneteenth as a holiday. It's like it's going around all these issues that we said we have and we're voicing our opinions on these issues, but it was just like the government, let me just shut them up by giving them a holiday. So how did you feel about it when you first heard the news, Mr. Peters?
Well, listen, it's clear that we have a long way to go. It's not what we want, but it is something. But let me just say this. It's not what we asked for, but Juneteenth deserves to be a holiday. So I don't want to come off as if Juneteenth does not deserve to be a holiday, because if for no other greater reason than for us to always be about educating our kids in the future about what Juneteenth really is and why it's significant, because it's not taught in our history classes. It's not taught in American history, although it's a part of American history. And it's not taught in U.S. history, although it's a part of U.S. history because it happened in the U.S. in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So in 1921. So if for nothing other than the fact that it forces us to educate and talk about it, and for kids to truly get an understanding of Juneteenth. Now, why is that significant? I grew up and went all the way through secondary education into higher education before I was first introduced and understood what Juneteenth was.
Same here.
That's unacceptable. And thank goodness for my HBCU in getting me up to speed on all things that should have been relevant and should have been a part of my history, but it wasn't taught. It wasn't taught. And so I have a hard time trying to figure out how we can be taught about Gettysburg and what happened in the 1800s, but we can't talk about what happened in 1921.
Exactly.
So yeah, so I'm not disappointed that it's a holiday. I want to be clear on that. I'm not disappointed that it's a holiday. We needed it to be a holiday. But the fact that we got that holiday does that not dismiss, nor does it takes us out of the responsibility of continuing to fight to get the things that we asked for and that we deserve.
Exactly. Well put. I definitely agree. I didn't really know about Juneteenth really until I came to college, or I want to say like my senior year of high school. Like I really didn't know. So it is very imperative that we teach these to our kids at a very young age so they can understand their own history, So I definitely agree. I just wanted to share that post because I felt, a lot of people had a little mixed emotions about the holiday being about Juneteenth being made into a holiday.
Yeah.
So another issue that I saw that was pretty aware is it was the education department says that Title IX protects LGBTQ students. So I feel as though, well, on some of my research that I found, first of all, basically right now in, I want to say Congress and just in the government overall, if a lot of people don't know, a lot of departments of the government are trying to basically, they're cleaning house of all Trump's policies, or they're reversing Trump's policies. So that's why it's a lot. Dealing with my internship, we're dealing with a lot of things like on the Capitol and the Hill and stuff. So it's a lot of markups, a lot of amendments, a lot of changing in different bills and stuff that's going on right now. And this is one of them right here. And so the update is a reversal of a Trump administration policy rolling back the Obama era guidance that directed schools to allow transgender students to use the bathrooms, changing rooms, and other school facilities that align with their gender identity. President Biden issued an executive order in the first days of his presidency directing all federal agencies to implement the Bostock ruling and update their enforcement of sex discrimination protections according. So in the 6-3 Bostock majority opinion, where it was Justice Neil Gorsuch, he was a former appointee that was appointed by President Donald Trump, and he wrote that discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity is discrimination based on sex. So this is a real pondering type of question. It's a reoccurring question. And now we're living in a new day and age where it's a lot of gay rights and stuff like that that's going on. And so I feel as though, how would you feel? I can see people's concerns about transgenders using the gender that they identify as when it comes to bathrooms and changing rooms. But I don't know. I have mixed emotions about this. I feel like it's a good start to trying to make sure that that nobody is discriminated and that we're trying to be inclusive. Everybody's trying to be inclusive nowadays. So I think it is a good start, but I do see people's concerns. I will admit I can see why they're concerned about this issue.
Well, what are your thoughts coming from representing a different generation? What are your thoughts on this? How do you see it from your lens?
So I've heard of, different incidents and stories occurring where it has been transgender women, if that's how you say it, men turning into women, and where they've used the same dressing rooms and stuff like that as women, but they have violated. I think it was one incident where this man, he kind of was touching these women inappropriately in the restroom and stuff like that. So issues like that, I can see people's concerns. And sometimes I can see at first that it might be uncomfortable, but I do have to realize that not every transgender is like that one woman who was trying to act out or become, So I guess my only concern would be, the only issue that I would have with this is that it is also, I don't want to say it's easy, but when people are transitioning, of course they're not going to be full of estrogen and stuff like that. So I feel as though certain men can dress up and try to act like they're women, but they can use this as ways to sexual assault, rape, or harass women in these type of like safe environments. I feel as though that would be my only issue with this, especially with Title IX, because this has to be dealing with schools now. And so that's my only issue. Like, how can you trust that people won't do harm?
Yeah, well, it's an issue to address. I think the other reality we have to keep in mind, we can't trust that people don't do harm that are same sex. So I mean, so I look at it from a different lens. You got that same threat that you're talking about is the same threat you have right now, even if it's same sex. And I think for the most part, 99% of people is going through the process. If I'm a transgender from a male to a woman, I don't view myself as a man.
Exactly.
Right. So I view myself as a woman. So really, I don't really buy that argument. That doesn't concern me as well. I can take you back to my first experience with co-ed bathrooms. I never forget, I was in New York. This was several years ago. And I won't even say the name of the hotel, but a really fancy hotel, and they had co-ed bathrooms. And it was the first time me being from the South, spending most of my life in the South, even though I've traveled all over, where men and women went into the same restroom. Um, and let me tell you, it was no big deal. It was no
Went to
big
the
deal.
same.
But
Wait. So they all went into the same restroom. Like,
mhm,
wow.
same
I've
restaurant, same restaurant.
never.
It was a co-ed. It was a co-ed restaurant,
Wow.
and everybody is cordial, respectful. I mean, they have their stalls and stuff for women and things. It really was no big deal. And I had all this apprehension about it before I went in there, but after experiencing, I'm like, you know, it just becomes a thing. So I think sometimes because anytime we have change or we introduce a change into our environment, it always calls us to say what if, and we're supposed to do that. But a lot of times the what if we're worried about are even greater as it stands today. So, sometimes we just have to keep it in perspective. I always told somebody asked me the other day, well, they just imagine the first time a plane went in the air. Imagine
Mhm.
the what ifs for that. Well, what if the plane get in there and it don't stay in the air? And if they would have stopped, okay, so if that kind of talk would have prevented the Wright brothers from stopping the pursuit of aviation, we wouldn't be flying today.
Exactly.
And we don't even think nothing about it today. You see what I'm saying? But so I'm not a big fan of stopping or limiting how people think and the newness of things, because if that was the case, we'd still be traveling in horse and buggy, and really you'd be restricted to certain parts of the country. You would never get to see as much of the country, because if you go back to horse and buggy to go from the East Coast to West Coast, you could only make that trip once or twice a year because it take you 6 months. So
Exactly.
I mean, how much of the world will you ever see? How
I
often would
think.
you see family and friends?
I think.
No internet. So, I mean, think about it. If we don't change and innovate, what we're doing today, we would not be able to do.
Exactly. And I do agree. I think the only issue when it comes to breaking this Title IX issue down and making sure that everybody is included in this issue, and it's everybody has equal opportunities. I would say when it comes to sports, that's the only issue
Yeah.
and the only thing that's going to be the pushback, because I mean, honestly, how can you determine who competes in what race? And even though people that are still transitioning, they still tend to have, if it's a male transitioning to a female, they still tend to have more testosterone, and that can still, help them win the race or help them win the basketball game, or except.
Well,
And
yeah.
so it's
And
that's the only thing.
here's
That,
here's
I'm
the
bad.
here's the way I see that, right?
Mm,
And that's the part that makes it a little tougher, right? Because now you gotta look at the fairness of sport. So that's where they get into the testing to test testosterone levels, and your testosterone level has to be within a certain parameter. The standard deviation or means of accuracy to make it even and competitive, and you don't have a competitive advantage. So they have science can help you there. Science can break that down and tell you if this is going to be fair, what realm you have to be in, and what barriers you have to meet to be able to participate in certain sports. If you're going to participate as a woman, otherwise, if you're not in that room, you have to participate with men, and that's just the way it goes. Um, so I think sometimes we can overthink it. That's one that we don't have to overthink. Science can answer that for us really clearly and really simply. So I think the biggest thing that we've been even dealing with I think it's Title 8 or maybe it's Title 3. I can't keep up, but the one that says that you have to have an equal amount of sports for women that you have for men,
okay.
right? And so that's the bigger one to me, making sure you have the disparity. And the other big ones is making sure it's equal. So we saw that this year with the NCAA tournament. You saw what happened at the men's NCAA tournament, everything they have, and then you look at what's going on with the women's NCAA tournament. And
Prime
that's at the
example.
highest level. So that kind of stuff has to stop, right? they're both governed by the same governing body. So how can you have two separate experiences?
Exactly. And that's a prime example. That's the issue that we also, when it comes to making sure that Title IX does protect these type of people right here, the LGBT plus community, especially making sure that men and women's sports are treated equally. It happens every year, even at the professional level when it comes to the WNBA and the NBA. A prime example is their paychecks, their contracts. In the NBA, men get about over 100 million, and the WNBA women can probably make, I think, sometimes six figures, maybe less than that. They don't really get them. You don't really hear a lot of $1 million contracts, but the WNBA is under the NBA, so it's enough money to go around. It's just stuff like that we have to get squared away.
Now, here's where there's going to be some pushback, right? And here's where I'm going to call women out for this. You got to support your own sports the way men support theirs, right? And so I gotta call a spade on that one. So if you're not going and supporting the WNBA and ain't but 2,000 people at the game, and the men's game is sold out with 18,000-20,000, that's on you. That's on you. And so you can't expect to have the same, especially at the pro level, right? At the college, we got to try to be equal. But at the pro level, you can't expect to have the same if you don't even support the same. So, we get out and we support our sports. And here's the other caveat. You got women that will go support the men's sport who won't support the women's sport. Mm-hmm. Y'all gotta look in the mirror at yourselves on that.
You gotta look in the mirror. That's what
Michael Jackson told you years ago. I'm gonna change the song a little bit. He said you gotta look at the man in the mirror. Y'all gotta look at the woman in the mirror.
Very, very true. I do agree with you. So now moving on, as you can see in every part of the country, we're trying to slowly but surely be basically everybody is fully open, but still trying to make sure that everybody is safe and getting these vaccines. They're just distributed proportionally well. And so one thing that I saw, and I feel as though, so I don't know if you know, this is two things that I want to bring aware and I want to hear your opinion on. Okay, so one thing, JSU has this new, Jackson State University, I love, has this new housing incentive. Yes. So where you show, the housing incentive is if you show proof of your vaccination, you can get $1,000 off of your housing for the academic school year. So, $500 off of every semester. And then also, I'm gonna break it down first. I don't want to dive into deep yet. But how do you feel about that? And do you feel as though when people in schools are using ways like this as a persuasion tactic to get people to get a vaccination, do you feel as though that's the right way to go about it? Or do you feel as though schools shouldn't do that? That's not fair. Because, some people don't want to get the vaccine at all, but they still want to have the housing incentive. So how do you feel? Because certain schools are starting to try to use this tactic. And not only that, certain schools, like I want to say, I know for sure it's either the whole AUC or it's the Clark Atlanta, and it's also USC, University of South Carolina. California. They're you have to have a vaccination before you can get back on campus this fall. Like, they're not playing. So how do you feel about that? Is this violating people's human rights? Like, how do you feel?
No.
You know how they play the victim. This is violating my rights. So
look, to those people, I say hogwash. And here's what I mean by that. Don't go to work and expect a paycheck. So I go to work, you don't, and you expect to get a paycheck. No, you don't get the incentive. So incentives are given based on a predetermined criteria. You have a choice whether you want to take the challenge of the predetermined criteria or not. If you take advantage of it, you get the incentive. If you don't, you don't. That's fair. Everybody has the same fair choice. You get to make it. So I'm supposed to let everybody do it and not have to make the same choice? No, that's crap. That's crap. That's not real life. That's not real. Every day we have to make choices. We on the highway. You choose to go the speed limit. I choose to speed. I got a greater chance of getting stopped and getting a ticket. That's just how life works. What is that? Come on, man. I'm like the old show, like on ESPN. They said, "Come on, man."
No, yeah. And then, okay, so this is another thing that I kind of want to bring aware to you. So I feel like this is just morally wrong and it's really putting people's health in jeopardy. So people will go so low not to take the vaccine that they're creating fake vaccination cards. And that has become a thing. And so people are realizing, because kind of tell some of my coworkers and just regular people when I'm having casual conversation, I was hesitant about getting my vaccine, but I feel as though it's the right thing to do. Not only that, they're going to make a requirement everywhere. You have to have it when you're even traveling out the country sometimes. And I think a lot of people are it's starting to click. But instead of them actually going to get the vaccine, they're trying to see ways to get fake vaccination cards. And
So first of all, this was one of my biggest issues with the vaccination program from the get-go. And remember, this was done under the Republican administration. So not to knock it, but I don't care if it was Republican, Democrat, or Independent. I still thought this was the biggest mistake ever.
Okay.
We're in the 21st century. We are a modern, technology-driven country. And now you mean to tell me one of the most critical medical initiatives you got going worldwide, and we gonna write it on a piece of paper to prove validation? Are you kidding me? Our driver's license is more sophisticated than our vaccination card, but our vaccination card means life or death. Are you kidding me? That's what the federal government came up with? A piece of paper we gonna write on? No. There should have been some kind of system that transmits out like a passport or something, so you lessen your chance of corruption in that way. That I understand we were in a rush to get it out, but that was crazy. So now you got too many touches of human error, and and then for the people that are doing it, listen, America, in my Bernie Mac voice, America, that's a bull. You are playing with people's life, and it's not fair. You have a right to play with your own life. You don't have a right to play with other people's lives. So the fact that you would fake a vaccination card and get around people and have them assume you're vaccinated when you're not, put everybody in jeopardy. Not only is that wrong, that's selfish, and just ask yourself, would you want the same thing done to you or your family members or people you love?
Exactly. Exactly. And that's how I feel. When I found that, I was like, people are really making these vaccination cards. Like, that's sick because you are putting.
But I fought the government for that because I thought that our vaccination record keeping was too elementary, too simple, and there's no sophistication, there's no integrity, there's no security around that. I was baffled and perplexed when I saw what they came up with. I said, all the PhDs and AEDs and this degree and this medical science, and this is what you come up with? So no, I wasn't pleased with that. I knew that would be a problem when they created it.
Yeah, and I feel like hopefully once the world United States fully reopens and stuff like that, hopefully they'll take your idea into consideration and maybe, put this on our IDs somewhere where it states we are fully vaccinated, since this is, it's a big issue because people are really trying to get these. And on top of that, like I said, colleges are trying to be fully open. Like, I think as of right now, as I know, everything can change, but JSU is 70% in person this fall. You can do, I want to say in person, and the other class 30% may be hybrid or strictly online, but people are trying to be fully back in these offices, fully back to work, fully back to school. They're trying to get back to the regular norm. So I think, hopefully people get vaccinated. If you don't, I truly understand, but don't think you're going to get all the incentives that come with it.
Here's what I say to people that, and I'm going to say this. I haven't had anybody that challenged me on vaccinations yet that had a logic or reason that made any sense. So I welcome the challenge for somebody that's put some deep thought in it and got some logic and sense to it. But I've heard a bunch of foolishness, and I'm gonna call you out on that if you bring it to me. Because somebody told me the other day, the latest one I got, yeah, man, I ain't gonna get vaccinated because I don't want to be like the Tuskegee experiment. So I said, okay. I said, what do you know about the Tuskegee experiment? Because I know that the person I'm talking to wasn't even born when the Tuskegee experiment happened. So I said, well, what do you know about the Tuskegee experiment? Man, I just know they got some shots. So what they get the shots for? I don't know.
Wow.
Well, what happened then? What's the big deal? How does the Tuskegee experiment relate to the vaccinations of today? I don't really know nothing about that, but I just know that my uncle's cousin told him that that's how he got syphilis, and his grandfather got syphilis back all them years ago because of that Tuskegee experiment, and they had to take them shots. So I ain't gonna take no shot. They had to give me a pill or something. You know what? Here's my response to that. Can you talk to me with some logical sense? Wait, I got time.
Right.
Because that kind of idiocy, that mess is going to get somebody killed. That's why people die. We got people that have died that didn't have to die because of messaging like that.
It's real.
If you gonna have that messaging, at least have the fortitude to do your research and due diligence to know what the heck you talking about.
I agree. Because
I can't speak for everybody else, but I went to DI Love, so if you're gonna bring it, you better bring some sense with you. Because the one thing we are is we will read and we will research, and you better come with it because we know what we're talking about. Otherwise, we don't say anything.
exactly. Because that's him saying he gonna I'd rather take a pill. That don't make sense at all. You're still taking it. Like you're still if that's the case, you're still
I'm
taking
like,
it.
what? So you think because you're taking the pill, the medicine changed?
That's what I'm and then you don't even know what actually happened with the Tuskegee experiments. You just saying things
Nothing.
to make an
Don't know
excuse.
nothing about it. I had someone tell me the other day, they were talking about Juneteenth. I said, what have you learned? Because we talk about Juneteenth principles on the show a lot. I'm talking about macroeconomies and I'm talking about the circulation of our dollar. That's all based on what happened in Black Wall Street, aka the Tulsa Massacre in 1921.
Mm-hmm.
But people would watch, just start challenging people that are talking about Juneteenth and start asking about Juneteenth and see how much they really know about Juneteenth.
Because some people just gonna be like, I just know that's when slaves were officially free. And then some people just gonna be like, well, I don't know, but I just know it's a black holiday and I'm just doing what the black people do.
Yeah, wait a minute. And then I said, well, wait a minute, man. What state was Juneteenth? What did that state did that actually happen in? They don't know. Somebody told me it just happened in America. I said, let me give you some hints here. When anybody asks you a question, if you ever read a question on a test and they say which state, you got one of 50 choices, man. Hint, hint, it's a state. You got 50 of them. So that automatically narrows you down to 50 choices. What you talking about? It's in America. Man, come on. Look, people, it's time out for idiocy. It's time out for foolishness. Know your craft. Read, please.
Knowledge is power and understanding. And when you reading is fundamental. They'll answer your own questions. So the last
I can't make this up, Kennedy. I can't make this stuff up.
No, you cannot. Now, the last thing that I did, just kind of wanted to flag it really, just to give people an update. So, as you all may know, in the Texas House in the state of Texas, they were trying to pass legislation where we can have carry guns without a license, and now it has been improved recently, so it will be in effect September 1st. I am a little on edge about that. I feel as though it's it's gonna be another reoccurring issue when it comes to school shootings. Right there, on top of that, I just don't think you should be able to carry such a deadly weapon without the proper training or just the proper knowledge or just a license to say that you can carry that. And so I feel as though they're trying to stop. If states take after Texas, Mr. Peters, and they're trying to stop gun violence and reckless usage of these type of weapons, how can you do that when you're passing this type of legislation? You're kind of being counterproductive. If I'm not mistaken. So it's just, we just have to roll with the punches. I feel in Texas, I just don't really think this was a great decision. I personally don't think so.
Yeah, it really it perplexes me because I'm like, so wait a minute, you in Texas Texas perplexes me on most things, right? Especially our leadership. But so you mean to tell me you're gonna pass a law now that essentially says you don't even have to have a license, nothing, no mental health screening, no background check, or nothing to walk around with a loaded gun? This is not the Wild Wild West, people. Even they had protocols.
Even they did.
I mean, how in the world does that curtail gun violence? Because you and I both know if you have a gun on you, the more likely you are to use it. If you have a gun on you that's not concealed, the more likely you are to use it. And then as an African American man, you're most likely to use it on me. Why? Because look at what's going on in society. I thought it was absolutely crazy. I couldn't believe that our elected officials would pass that, but that tells you where we are in this country. And that's when I said, America, we got a problem.
So, and this is the type of question that I want to bring. I kind of just thought about it. So when it comes to situations like this, I think I want to believe it was the Philando Castile case where he said, I have a gun and I have a gun license, and the police still shot him. So now, how can you? I really want to deep dive into this new bill that's being passed, because how can you tell if is it an age requirement still? Like, people can't even say I have a gun license now. So how can you tell if this is legal or illegal? You know what I'm saying? It's just so many what ifs with this legislation. It's just kind of like, why would you still pass it? And I know a lot of times conservatives have definitely. Continue. Go ahead, Mr. Peters.
No. Finish your thought.
No, I was just saying, I know this has been a long time coming for conservatives, but I just don't think this was well thought through. Because, like I said, a prime example is the Philando Castile case. He was shot and he said he had a gun license. And I know, and that's just one of many other cases that we don't really know of, if we're being honest. So how can this type of legislation be passed? And it's passed with such a deadly force. It's a gun. It's not a taser. It's not pepper spray. It's a gun. It's a lethal weapon. So.
Well, first of all, it's because we're not dealing with the real issue, and we don't choose to deal with the real issue in America, which is race. And particularly the racial tension between African American males and law enforcement. And that's just being honest. And then if we dive even deeper, there's a greater tension between African American males and white males in law enforcement. And the reason for that is because they don't know each other and they haven't taken time to know each other. And the other problem we have, if we look at society, is that that white male that's in law enforcement is intimidated by the black male from the get-go. And so when you have anything that intimidates you, you're automatically on the edge with it, right? And so when you approach that car, I give you a prime example. I have been pulled over in suit and tie in the middle of the day. You've already run my license. You see there's no outstanding tickets. Everything registers and check out with me. And you still approach my vehicle with your gun out. Now, same token, if I put another car in there and it's a group of white males, you don't approach your car with your gun out at all. You're totally relaxed, you're at ease, because you don't see them as a threat, but you see me as a threat. If there's more than me in the car and we're black, then you're really threatened. That's the real issue. And that's a race issue. And what that really is a tolerance and understanding issue. Because if you look at that situation, and I bet if you took a deeper dive into those specific white males, they don't have a diverse group of friends. They don't hang around African American males socially. I'm saying outside the work environment in an elective way where they hang around socially. And so that's why they have that. If you take a white male that does have friends like that and does hang around them socially, they don't have that problem. So your problem really gets to, I'm intimidated by things I don't understand and things I'm not comfortable with. Period. That's all of us. We're intimidated by things we don't understand and things we're not comfortable with. And today's state, white males, particularly and overwhelmingly in law enforcement, don't understand black males and they're not comfortable with black men. Period. And until we deal with that, everything else we're doing is nothing but a symptomatic band-aid that won't ever cover anything.
And I completely agree. And that's why I named the title of the show today, Never Ending Fight for Justice, because Never Ending Race for Justice, because it's never ending. It's like we keep on voicing what we want to be, what we want to see change. And it's like, okay, well, we'll do this instead. It's like, I said I wanted some ice cream and you give me cake. Like, that's not, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's not what we're asking for. And I feel like even just what you said we're intimidated by things we don't know and we're uncomfortable. And situations like that, I feel as though, especially when it comes to a man having a gun and license, you don't have to be licensed to carry. How can you tell, like, are you going to always be uncomfortable with me? Are you always going to be intimidated with me if you pull me over? Because I'm not breaking the law this time. I can carry this with or without a permit, with or without a license. So that's the situation I have with that. And not only that, I feel as though it's giving people easier access to guns. So it's just creating it's just honestly speeding up the whole cycle of gun violence and trying to prevent it. And then we're trying to make legislation where we can stop this issue. And then here is another unprogressive act of change where we're okay, well, let me just go ahead and pass this bill where people don't have to have a gun. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I pray and I hope that maybe we can get this bill overturned in the future, but that's why the midterm elections and these upcoming elections locally, statewide, is all important. That's the key to change. I really believe that. And it's a critical time right now. Very critical.
You know what, Kennedy, when I think about it, one day, if you choose to, you may have a son. And you'll have to look at this through the lens of a parent. And fortunately for me, my father gave me a great example to live by, because he always raised me, and it started with his mother. But he raised me in a diverse environment. So I've always been very comfortable. And I've always had a diverse group of friends. So I've been in white households, and they've been in mine. And so I was able to have a broader perspective, and they understood why I did some of the things that I did. I understood why they did some of the things they did. And we had that safe place because of the relationship, that when I didn't understand something, I could pick up the phone and say, hey man, I don't understand this. Why do y'all do this? And likewise. When you don't have that, or you're not willing to do that, then you're limited in your perspective and your scope, which makes you one-dimensional, but also makes you get intimidated by what you don't know. And so when we look at where we are in America, that's what's happening. And it's always been an issue in corporate America, right? Just in a different kind of way. I can remember early on in my career, and because I have a name that you, until you see me, you wouldn't know what my color is, right? I don't have a name that gives you any indication of what race I may be. And I have literally shown up to places and introduced myself and tell them I'm Leslie, and they don't even hear it. They say, And they said, we sit over there, we have one before you. And then I'll hear someone say, hey, it's Leslie Peters arrived here, looking for Leslie. And I'm sitting right there. I'm
Wow.
sitting right there hearing the whole conversation. So I know right off the top, I got a problem. I got a problem
Mhm.
I'm going into right away. So we have to, we as African Americans have to continue to be diverse and put ourselves out there to understand more. But they're going to have to open up too. And I think there's the problem. So when we look historically, that's the biggest concern with African American
Mhm.
males. Just like black women get the label what? Angry black woman,
Exactly.
aggressive black woman. Well, sometimes, and here's been my philosophy. I've never really met a black woman that got angry for no reason. I'm just saying. I'm not saying it don't happen. I just there's always something that provokes that. They don't just walk around mad. I don't know how you got the moniker, but there are, but a lot of this is just cultural misunderstandings. So when I don't know that and I haven't been around that, the way I'm going to read and interpret that is going to be much different than the way you meant it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it
And
does.
so I think about Sandra Bland and what happened in that case. Well, I guarantee you that officer that ended up arresting her and taking her to that, and she goes to jail. Remember, this is a headlight that was out.
Right.
That's how
It's
this
a headline.
works. I guarantee you, in his friend circle, he don't have any black men.
Don't.
No, so he don't have a lot of black women friends that's around.
Exactly.
So because one of the biggest things of intimidation that most people don't realize now is shifts, right? Like we talk with our hands a lot as a culture.
Yes.
It just means we passionate, but sometimes other people read that as aggressive.
Right.
So that puts them in a defensive mode. Well, think about it. People that know you of different races that have had a chance to spend around you and know you, they don't read you that way anymore. So it's just about understanding and knowing and tolerance. And until we as America understand that there's a reason why if I need blood and we're the same type blood, when we go to the hospital, you don't care what I look like because our blood the same and it works in both of our bodies because it's universal. And so if we ever get to that, we can truly rebuild America. This is an issue of humanity. It's not really, it really transcends beyond race. And that's why I'm always talking about the same justice. I'm always talking, challenging people to be broader, build a diverse friend base, make relationships with people outside of your own. I mean, genuine, deep relationships. So you can be honest and be vulnerable. Look, I don't understand why you guys do this in your culture. Can you give me some knowledge on it? That's important. Don't walk around ignorant.
Exactly. I agree. And you know what, Mr. Peters, you said something that I know we're almost out of time, but you said something I kind of wanted to touch on. And I feel like I kind of heard this from my parents and people their age as well. You said how your name, you can't tell what your race is. Do you feel as though, because I mean, you can kind of tell with my name, but you still can't tell what race I am
No, you
really.
can't. You have
Oh,
one of those same type names that's really
right.
universal.
So, do you feel as though us black people, because I know some black people are kind of like, that's why I want to name my child this, so it won't hinder them from progressing in type of business professional environments and on like even with applications. Do you feel as though that's important that we should do, or do you feel as though like how do you feel about that? Because that's one issue that I would like to tackle is having professional or names where you can't tell the gender, so it won't hold you back from progressing in the type of any application process.
Well, it shouldn't be that way, but it is.
Exactly.
And I'll repeat that. It shouldn't be that way, but the truth of the matter is, it is. And so, and ultimately, the first hurdle for a lot of us is just getting in the door. So we can't even get in the door because we're so easy to screen out by our name. So that doesn't help you. And people, the other argument to that would be like, it shouldn't be that way. I agree with you. It shouldn't be that way. But the reality is, it is. And so that's a decision that each parent will have to make. But I think it doesn't stop you, but it does provide another barrier that you have to go through.
Okay. Okay. I can agree. I was just trying to that was the first time somebody else that I heard speak on that, because I've heard that from my parents and other people saying how they want to name their child this because they don't want people to tell their race automatically, which is very true, and I can see why it shouldn't be that way, but it is. And it's just
Well, the translation is they want you to get a shot. At the end of the day, once you get a shot, it's up to you. You got to show out. You got to show up and show out. If you don't do that, I don't care what your name is. It's going to be what it is. But when you can't even get a shot because you're excluded right away, then that presents a problem. So I understand why people are, every parent wants to try to make things better for their child than it was for them. So if there's anything you learn on the way, and usually those things come from experiences. I've experienced it. Um, I know people that have experienced it on both sides. So you make adjustments as you're raising your children based on your life experiences and what things you encountered and what barriers you had to go around. So you try to reduce the amount of barriers that they have to endure.
yeah, so it does make sense, but that's really all I have for today. Make sure that you guys, Urban Law family, that I'm putting it in the chat right now. Make sure that y'all click that link to join our newsletter and subscribe for our email reminders for our live. This was a great topic. I'm glad you were able to make it, Mr. Peters.
And
So,
Kennedy, before you go out, I mean, we're still waiting on our newsletter from you on what's going on. So that needs to be getting kicked out this week. So here's my challenge to you, Kennedy. Before next Friday, everybody on this mailing list needs to receive their first newsletter from you, just kind of telling them what's been going on in your world as the Urban Law intern on the Hill, kind of what's going on. So I'm putting that back to you. I'm putting that back to you.
Yes, sir. Yeah. I'm going to write it down in my calendar. I'm going to start figuring out what I want to talk about. And yes, I will get started.
Now, there was a clip going around that went viral, and it's probably somebody you know because it was one of your classmates, probably science major, or criminal justice major, that was on the Steve Harvey show. And
yes. Yeah.
Did you see that one?
Yeah, I didn't see it, but I know she's actually she's a year. I think she's about to be a senior. But yeah, her name is Chelsea Waddell. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they said, Chelsea, what do you do? She says, I'm a whatever classification you were at the Jackson State University, and then he said, Sonic Boom. So of course, D is a special place. So I'm looking forward. We got about 75, 76 days to the first football game in Miami. I'm ready.
Yes, and if you look at Deion's social media and this like the whole football social media, they've been preparing. They've been working out. I think they show clips like every week, if I'm not mistaken. But they've been getting ready. So
yeah, and they just had their first camp, and we had all the stars at Jackson, from T.O. to the Honey Badger, Tyler Matthews to and tons of others, Jimmy Smith and Jamario Davis and Nate Newton, and the list goes on and on. So great time to be a Tiger, and and for all my friends at the opt-out school, and they know who I'm talking about, at the opt-out school, we're looking forward to seeing you too. So maybe this time you'll show up.
Oh yeah. Well, all right, Irvin. It's a great show. Mr. Peters, you have a great rest of your vacation. Make sure you make it back to Texas safe and sound. And all right, y'all. Any last words you want to
say? Bye, everyone.
All right, bye.